Welcome to Home Gym History. My name is Rob, and I am thrilled to be here with Kris from Beltfed Strength. Welcome, Kris.
How you doing? Thanks
I'm
for having me.
doing great. So, listeners, this is what we're going to go through. The meat and potatoes of this lesson, of this whole podcast episode, will be the history of weightlifting belts. And then, of course, I want to hear about Kris's personal history with producing weightlifting belts, as well as other leather products and things with Beltfed Strength, how he came to that, his own lifting experience. And I have a bunch of belts on either side of me on the safety straps of my rack to show to Kris, and some old magazine ads and things to go through. So this will be a fun one, whether you wear a weightlifting belt or not. And maybe by the end of the episode, you're going to head out there and pick up one. So I'll make sure I drop the links in the description for Beltfed Strength. Wear a belt that you deserve. So this is all brought to you, by the way, I should say, by Garage Gym Radio. Kris, let's start out just with a simple, who the heck are you?
Man, I guess that depends on how far back you want me to go, but could get kind of messy.
How about lifting? How about lifting? We'll start there. Where did you start lifting and getting into strength pursuits?
So not as early as I wish I had. I remember when I was probably 9 or 10, my dad took me to the gym, and now that I'm 30 years removed, I can really tell the truth about the whole incident. I made it as miserable as possible so that he'd never take me back again, and it worked. So ended up cutting myself on my shin, bleeding all over the place, and getting fussed at. I succeeded, though. But looking back now that I've been doing it steadily for, I guess it's 23 now, about 13 years, a little over 13 years. I wish I'd have started way back then. I'd be in a much better place. I got into it a little bit when I was in the Marine Corps, but it being in the fleet, you don't really have a lot of time for that. You're basically just doing the bro split stuff, going in and doing curls and walking around the gym and messing with each other. But seriously, now for about 13, 14 years, it's been something I've not been able to do without.
That'd be a good way to describe my military experience with lifting, especially when I was part-time. I was in the National Guard. So whenever I was activated or deployed, that would describe it like, all right, I'm off. I'll go to this little gym on base, or if I was in training or whatever. And nothing was regular. Nothing was anything substantial. It was all just kind of passing time and messing around. Yep. So in any case, that brings us to Beltfed Strength. So am I correct to assume Beltfed, like Beltfed machine gun, is that where the name came from? Okay,
you got it. So to speak on that a little bit, I'm pretty, I don't know if I should be surprised or not, but I'm surprised at how many times I've had to explain the name, but I guess I really shouldn't be, because most people aren't exposed to that part of reality.
Yeah, sure.
I thought it was a really clever name. Belt fed, machine gun, Marine Corps.
I'd see it as I don't know if you intended it this way, but I thought it was a really intelligent, double entendre, that it's also the way that you feed your family. Your family is belt fed. So I thought it was great. I mean, it's your life is belt fed. It's kind of homage to your military past. It all comes together.
You got it. I think our shared
I might be the only guy out there that got it, but I got
it. Yeah, I think maybe 1% of us gets it, but
yeah.
I still think it was a good idea.
I think it's a very cool name, and on your logo, which is just up over your shoulder, the belt that old Time Strongman is wearing has the ammo on it, has the rounds on it, so that's kind of
27 linked ammunition.
A clue. Now, do you have experience when you're a Marine with such a weapon that would have a belt fed?
You got it. Yeah, I was a 240 gunner for most of it.
Okay.
The bulk of that was in my second trip to Iraq and Fallujah. I was a gunner on one of our gun trucks. You grow to love something like that, something that's heavy and awkward and powerful. And I don't know if I'm talking about the gun or myself now, But it becomes the science behind being a machine gunner, the detail that goes into it, and just the amount of effort it takes to be proficient with something as complicated as that. You know, some people think it's just a big gun, but it's a little more intricate than that, a little more in depth. It's an art, and it's kind of hard to explain that to folks sometimes, but it means a lot to me, and it'll always be something that I look back on and wish I was still doing, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's. I would assume that is a common misconception that, you just jump in there and pull the trigger, and not exactly. This is a little more complex machine that you're operating, that you're maintaining, that you're doing with a skill that's involved on all those fronts. So yeah, I think there probably is an art to it. With my first career field in the Air Force, I worked with a lot of different equipment. I was a life support and survival specialist, so I had to maintain all that equipment. And that gave me an appreciation for equipment and for whatever. It's a life raft. Well, not exactly. I mean, it's just a piece of rubber if it doesn't operate properly. So
there's consequences.
Yeah, you're going to sink pretty quick.
Came into the business with it. It's the more you know about your equipment, and the more familiar you are with it, the more able you are to employ it. And no matter what it is, whether it's a pencil or all the way up to $1 million piece of machinery, the more effective you can be. But I think that's lost on a lot of people. I think it's because it gets boring sometimes. Who wants to learn all the intricacies of something? And I do, and I think people should suffer that boredom a little bit more. I think it'd make things a lot better for everybody.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, a barbell is a length of steel. Exactly. So it's a tool, and think about all the time and energy, listeners, that you put into a barbell and you put into a dumbbell, and learning the proper mechanics, the proper form, the proper everything to do the things that you do with it. Well, that all connects. So then
takes a little bit of passion.
You move on from the military. Did you jump right into Beltfed Strength and producing belts? How did you get to this point?
That's still a mystery to me, man. I was a deputy sheriff for a while, and thoroughly enjoyed that job. Did not so much enjoy my coworkers. I probably you should probably put up a disclaimer that I got a lot of hot takes on things. I don't look at things the way people probably think I should or would.
Wow. I can't promise that I'll agree with all your hot takes, but I promise I'll listen to them.
They're not as radical as they might seem. They're a little more just based in common sense, like most things should be. Love the job. Did not enjoy my coworkers. Some of them, 2 or 3 to this day, I'd still bleed for if I needed to. But for the most part, I think translates to the barbell pretty well. You're gonna get in what you put out of a barbell for the most part. There's going to be a lot of power leak there. You're not going to get 100% gains back on everything, but in a job like that, you're not going to get anywhere near out of it what you put into it, and that's the way it should be. You're there to basically sacrifice 12 hours a day whenever you can on your off days, not sit back and say, "Oh, that's not my problem," or facilitate this us versus them mentality. So I realized probably about 4.5 years in that I wasn't gonna win that battle, and it was doing me more harm than good. After a little over 5, I cut ties and decided I'd try to do something on my own.
Gotcha.
Here we are.
And here you are. Yeah. So then you started Beltfed Strength. What was your experience with leatherwork prior to that? I mean, was it a hobby that you were kind of tinkering around with? No?
It was absolutely nothing. I had no idea what I was doing.
Just jumped in.
You got it. I just started, I just signed up for a strongman competition. My first one. I guess this was a little over almost 4 years ago. And I needed a belt. I'd been the typical gym bro anti-belt. I don't need a belt. What's that going to do for me? I can do all this myself. And I realized closing on this competition that I probably needed one. And Randy's dad has been making leather goods for probably 30 years now, running his own business for about 25. He makes a lot of smaller goods, wallets, trouser belts, bags, briefcases, stuff like that. Pretty fancy stuff. So I asked him to teach me the basics. Once I found out how much a belt was going to cost, he showed me the ropes on the putting two pieces of leather together and throwing some suede on it. And I thought, this is not that hard. There's a way to make these fancy. Randy's a pretty decent artist. Why don't we put some artwork on these things and try to sell them? And I know no one is going to believe this, but I had no idea who Pioneer was until about 6 months after we started. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not the first one to have this idea. So we just kept running with it, and it got more popular than we anticipated it in a very short amount of time. And we decided to stick with it. So this is all we've got now. It's just both of us, luckily or unluckily, whichever way you want to look at it. She had gotten laid off from a job at United Healthcare after 14 years, I think, around that same time that I decided to start doing this. And that's what we've been doing ever since.
You're all in.
Yep. No choice.
So I recently was talking with someone, a father of one of my kids' friends, who same kind of thing. He started a business, and I said, "Oh wow, how'd you get the inspiration to do that?" And he said, "Well, I lost my job." And I was like, "Okay, well then, that's a time to jump." So, but I mean, it led to happiness for him, and it led to some happiness for you guys. Because I was going to ask the breakdown. You mentioned being a deputy sheriff, maybe not enjoying some coworkers. Are you doing all right with your coworkers these days? Are you still married?
I'm trying to make sure she's not standing behind me. So it's I'm not gonna lie, it's taxing. It takes a brave person to. In
all seriousness, that's a legitimate question: is how do you balance running a business together, working together in close proximity, and being married,
and training together 3 days a week?
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, I'm lucky. I'm very lucky, and she's not behind me, so. I don't have to make that secret hand signal. I'm not distressed or anything. It's rough though. Anybody that thinks they can do it and just, have a great day every day is sadly mistaken. It takes a lot of work, but I'm very lucky. And my mom works with us a few days a week at least now. That's one of the things when we started to sell a little bit, I started to think about, not really expansion, but filling out the ranks a little bit more. And that was one of the things I wanted to do, was be able to hire her so she could have something to do and be around, that I could annoy her a little bit more. But the dynamic's a little strange sometimes, but it's still worth it. Very much worth it.
Very cool. And I mean, I was thinking about it from what I see you post on Instagram. And listeners, if you don't follow, there's Beltfed Strength, and then there's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Beltfed Muscle Mommy.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is Randy. So that's it. I follow both of you, and from what I see you both post, am I correct that the majority of the artistic efforts would be Randy, and the majority of the sewing and cutting and producing would be you? That's kind of the division of things. I'm sure you both help either way at times with a big order or something like that, but is that the normal line of work?
Yeah, that's usually all that artistic stuff's usually her department.
Okay.
I'm more of a, I don't know. I can't really put a name on it, but I make all the flat goods. I guess you could say that.
Well, I mean,
I don't really
I've got my belt here.
There you go.
It's become my everyday.
Yep. Yeah, that was all her.
Yeah. I mean, it's become my everyday belt, but it's also become a focal point of my gym. I've had several people stop by, visit, everything from family members to just fellow vintage weights collectors or friends come in the gym. And it's one of the things they gravitate towards. They're like, "Whoa, where'd you get this belt?" And the second thing they notice that I wanted to ask about and point out is, as soon as they touch it, as soon as they pick it up, they're like, "Oh, wait, this isn't just painted on here. Like, look, this is like cut in."
Yep.
So that's a cool thing that I don't know if listeners, if you don't follow them on Instagram, you might not see it. You can see Randy working on this, that she cuts the different things into the belt so that it's not just painted on. It's part of the belt. It's what you're wearing. Right. So I feel very grateful to have this. It's one of those things that you look around, and my gym's kind of like a revolving door sometimes. I get certain weights come in, and then I see something else I like. I trade it out, or some new product comes out. I'm like, I don't need this anymore. But there's a handful of things in my gym that I'll never part with, and I'm comfortable saying this is one of them. It's very cool.
That's what we want to hear, man. It's not. I got a bad penchant for getting a little too poetic about stuff, but
Yeah,
I want, if you're going to buy something, you're going to spend money on something, I want it to be useful and functional, and
absolutely.
I want it to last. But there's no reason it can't be stylish or pretty or inspiring or whatever at the same time. And I think that the amount of work that goes into the belt, it's not, we're not trying to mass produce anything. I don't want that to become our focus. The amount of work that's going into each belt is the same, on the same principle as the amount of work that goes into every single time you walk into the gym. Like, we're not out here just, I'm going to do a couple squats and then 3 months from now I might do a couple more. Like, this is a very long and troublesome struggle sometimes. And I think your gear should have that same amount of love and passion and effort put into it. I guess it's like a little metaphor, I guess.
Sure.
I also think too much, so
No,
people probably don't even think about this.
I mean, you're talking to a guy that has weights that I've kept because they're sentimental. So,
Right.
I mean, once you use something enough, it becomes more than just the object. It's yours. This isn't just a lifting belt. This is my lifting belt. Like, someday one of my kids will have this belt, and it'll be like, oh, that's Dad's belt. Like, that's where I got this.
That's what we're going for. We sell a belt. Well, I think it's still technically out of stock. My dad and grandfather both lifted quite a bit, and old Papaw, his name is Ronnie Yarber. They called him Ron Braun back in the day. He was apparently pretty wild. He beat up 3 dudes with a trash can lid once.
I was going to say, you told me a story about him, and that was the story that was forever like ingrained in my mind. This image of a man that I've never even met before, but this image of a man like yielding a trash can lid.
Their gym was the gym was downtown. It was a pretty rough place. Had bullet holes in the wall, if that tells you anything.
Wow. Yeah.
He and this was back in the early '80s, late '70s. So it was the height of that the whole professional wrestling, that kind of roughhousing stuff. And I think these guys were outside drunk, coming down the street from a beer joint, and got too loud and pissed off the guys in the gym. So he went out there and they tried to jump him. He grabbed a metal trash can lid and took care of it. At least 2 of them, I think. It's
oh man, it's
now.
It's like an episode of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something. I don't know, like Casey Jones throwing around a trash can lid or something. Yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to kind of the heritage of things that some of this is in your blood, some of this has been passed down through the years. And as far as the years are concerned, when I started digging into this topic, I didn't know too much. I mean, there's a couple little things I knew about weightlifting belts, and I had my own personal use and personal history of them, for better or worse. But once I started digging in, I learned a lot. Is there anything, I'm not trying to stump you, but just to get like prior knowledge, anything you know about the history of weightlifting belts coming into this?
It's an industry that was born of simplicity. I know that much. In my own research, I was hoping that you could help me out with this one. I still cannot figure out why 10 and 13 millimeter is the common denominations for belts. That makes no sense to me. Knowing what I know about leatherwork now, I've got a few ideas, but as far as a functionality standpoint, it makes no sense to me at all.
Well,
I've got a bet that,
sadly enough, that is one of the things I was going to ask you. So,
I got you.
So this
I can
is
give
where
you my theories.
Yeah. So why don't you give me your theories? And if there is, this is where I've learned being a podcaster for a while now, that this is where I put it on my listeners. It's fine to admit you don't know something when you have lovely listeners like I have. So please, listeners, if you know the answer to that, if there's a definitive, concrete, this is where it began and why it began, 13 millimeter, please drop a comment. Let us know. And maybe Kris's theories are right. Maybe they're wrong. I don't know. So, I mean, to start way, way back, we're talking like legendary, mythical times. Milo and the bull. Have you heard about Milo? Progressive overload. He starts picking up the bull whenever it's a calf. And as it grows bigger, he keeps on squatting. Well, a part of that story I was unaware of was that predictably the cow eventually is slaughtered. I mean, he's on a farm and it's consumed by the hungry and, particularly strong Milo at that point, having lifted this thing. And then he also, they're not wasting anything. This is ancient times. He fashions the animal's hide into a crude belt, which he wears for his Olympic pursuits, because Milo then competes in the Olympics. So I didn't know that. That's one of the earliest kind of stories of a weightlifting belt. What's not known is whether that was as a trophy piece of look at, I'm going to remember this bull I lifted, or whether it actually functionally helped. Yeah, that's what's unknown about that. Similarly, it's unknown about Thor. Do you know anything about Thor's belt? The Norse legend?
I do not. I should.
I'm a Marvel fan. I really enjoy Thor. I think he's funny. I really like Fat Thor the best. But Thor, apparently, according to Norse legend, he has his hammer, but he also has a belt. So his iron belt doubles his strength. Like when he puts on the belt, it's just like a multiplier. He becomes twice as strong. So that kind of speaks to things that, like, I feel like there's a jump. Like I get a little push when I'm able to brace and put on my belt. Maybe it's psychological. I don't know. What do you think about that one?
I think it's both physiological and psychological. I've got the amount of people I've had to talk to about how the belt's not going to fix back pain per se is kind of shocking. But I do feel a lot more confident when I strap it on. Mm-hmm. For instance, I've got some pretty horrible SI joints, mainly from carrying around this giant gut for years. It's pulled my lower back forward too much, and finally lost. I think we're down like 45 pounds now. That pain's been pretty nicely gone for a long time now, a few months. But I decided after doing some pause deadlifts in the low fives the other day, I said, I can do these back off sets beltless. I don't need this. Because I've gotten in the habit of deadlifting shirtless because it's hot out in the little garage place where we lived, and I didn't want to wear the belt anymore because it was pinching my fat. And I picked up the first 415 and got it about halfway up and felt those two little pops come back and went, oh, this was a bad idea.
Yeah, there you go. That's a little alarm system going off for you.
You got it.
I should not be doing this.
It's definitely physiological too. I mean, it's, I can, when you've got something tactile that you can feel and know that you're bracing, you're not necessarily bracing against it, but it's giving you that reminder that you're bracing in all the right directions and all the right spots.
Sure.
It's definitely helpful.
Well, I think there's strength in routine, that it's part of the routine. You put on the belt and then take your breath, and then depending on whatever lift you're doing, you brace, and it's just part of that. So it kind of, there's an inherent like time to do business kind of, I don't know, thing that hits you once you get that belt on. Like, you know what you're doing. You're not putting that belt on to go eat some nachos. At least I don't.
Yeah.
But so maybe I should. Well, just a second here, Kris, and our editor, who's extraordinary, please cut this part out. I need a second to switch over to some images for you. And our editor is spectacular. Muhammad, I appreciate you. So let me see here. We'll do this. And we'll grab this. There's only 3 images to show you, and then I'm going to turn this off, and same thing, the editor can cut out our transition. So let me share.
How do my traps look? Do they look good?
Oh, I thought you were flexing the whole time, man. Let's see, share my screen. I'm new to sharing this stuff, so there we go. I got it. Okay, let me know if you see this dude. All right, you got an image there?
I see it now.
Cool. So then from these mythical and ancient sources of belts, we keep with the same notion and we get up to old Time Strongman. Like, were these belts functional or were they just decorative? And the image that you see here, Kris, is Professor Attila. He was one of the founding old Time Strongmen. Eugene Sandow was involved with him, and because of being involved with him and mentored by him, they wore like a small belt. If you look real close at the picture, it's almost like a belt like you'd wear with slacks or dress pants.
Right.
So I don't know. That's my question for you. Would a small belt like that, something 1.5 inches thick, would that still provide any functional help with bracing?
I think it would. You see that a lot in bench belts. And benching with a belt is something I'm not real proficient at. I think it's because my bench form's absolutely terrible. I have no technique whatsoever. I just lay down and push. But you do have a lot of 2-inch bench belts floating around.
Okay.
I think, from that laying down position, you're able to, you don't really need that wide surface to brace against.
Okay.
You just need that little reminder that this is where I need to brace. This is where I need to push my belly out to. I think once you get below probably 2 inches, maybe it's not really doing as much as it needs to.
So
but
it's kind of like a muscle mind connection aid.
Right.
Gotcha. And then things get a little bit wider with our man Louis Cyr. Louis Cyr had some extraordinary dumbbells that he would lift overhead. He'd do a bent press. He'd do other presses. And his belt was a little bit wider and very ornate. I was fortunate to see on a recent trip to York Barbell in their museum. I posted a video to my YouTube account, Vintage Weights PGH, and I saw not only Louis Cyr, one of his dumbbells, but also one of his belts. And this thing looked like, it was like these different placards of metal that were strung together by chain link. And then there were these pictures, which back then, we're talking like the turn of the century, the pictures were like these glass plate type photographs, old-timey photographs in each one of them. And that was like his championship belt. So it was really cool to see. But it did, as I looked at it, I thought, I don't know if that's functional or just decorative, because these were showmen. They're not, yes, they competed against each other, but old time strongmen, they were getting up in theaters and competing with just getting ticket holders to come in and pay to see them. So the performance value
that's really an actual limit strength feat than it was a spectacle. So it's not something they're trying to recruit every fiber of their being for. Not to discount all their
no, absolutely. But then that's what brings me to this. So in my humble opinion, historically speaking, the first time we can really, without a shadow of a doubt, say, you can see, I've not yet, and listeners, if you know who this is, it's a fairly famous photograph from those early Olympics in the 1904 Olympics. If you know who this lifter is, please let me know. I could not find the name of him, but he's wearing a belt that's substantial. I bet maybe 4 inches. So since it's the Olympics and they're trying to put up as much weight overhead, there's no performance value to it. It's all about strength. I feel comfortable staking a little claim that this is definitely a functional belt. Now, from there, we're going to transition again. So please, Muhammad, cut this little transition out for us. Has the image gone away there, Kris?
It has.
All right, excellent. So now let's get into the York gang, the 1950s, lifters like Steve Reeves and John Grimmick. They're wearing belts, and they're definitely functional belts. And this is where I have some questions for you about some of these belts that were produced. So this is a 1950 issue of Strength and Health magazine that York published. And in the back of it, you get, I always love these multi-product ads in the back. You got stuff like the teeth lifting strap that I spoke about on the odd product, or the iron shoe. And then right down here, there's no image of the belt itself other than this lifter is wearing it, but then the description is what I wanted to ask you about. So what it says is, lifting belts adds to your appearance 100%.
Absolutely.
There you go. That checks out. Helps you stand straighter when pressing. Improve all your lifts. That's a pretty big claim.
It is.
2.5 inch wide at the buckle, 6.5 inches at the back. Made of genuine cowhide, natural finish. Send your waist measurement when ordering, and the price is $5.95 post-paid. So shipping included. Wow. I found a belt that meets that description.
That's a deal right there.
Yeah, and this is 100% not a York 1950s belt. Right. It's from a chain called Sport Mart, but it does fit the description. So at the buckle, 2.5, 6.5 in the back. So my question for you is, and then it's just a fairly thin piece of leather there that's stitched around. Why the taper? Why this big part in the back? Is that just the theory behind it was just to brace the back better?
Yeah.
Versus the front?
From what I've gathered from a lot of the Olympic belt users, the tapered belt users, is it's just a little more of that tactile response you get from that part of your core.
Yeah.
Your whatever you want to call it. I don't, being a bigger belly, I don't, it's not really comfortable for me. I know that somebody else who may have a little more insight on that is my buddy Artem from Northlift Belts up in Canada.
I've seen you share his stuff, and I started following him.
That man's my hero. Yeah, he's
very cool guy.
He's doing it right. He's a good dude. Makes really, really, really nice stuff.
Yeah,
and you can tell he cares about what he does. But I talked with him about it. It's been a long time. I've asked him. I've talked to a couple of the bodybuilders at the gym, but it's, I'd say 8 times out of 10 now, it's probably more of a traditional thing than it is anything else.
Okay.
But back then, I think it was just more that that's where I want to feel the engagement at. So that's where I want that padding or bracing.
Well, there's actually later on, I mean, this is from the 1990s. What is the brand here? Harbinger. I mean, there's at least half an inch of padding here, which seems odd to me. Like, I don't know. I tried it on just to kind of see, like, what's up with this padding.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a purpose for padding in belts or no?
I think there's a purpose. This will be another one of my hot takes.
Okay.
A lot of this stuff, I guess with any industry really, is born of convenience and comfort sales. I think people, and I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, like here's this big dude talking about us little dudes. A lot of people, they don't really want to get stronger. They just want to feel like they're doing something. And they're afraid of little small injuries, and they hear, oh, well, if you wear a belt, you won't hurt your back. Well, I can tell you right now, I've hurt mine a few times wearing a belt.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, the padding, honestly, there have been times that I've been wearing my belt saying, damn, I wish this thing was a little bit softer. But it's, once you get into that on that end of the spectrum towards the comfort, you're really shying away from the end where you're getting benefit of it as a tool and a training aid, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. Well, I think a belt breaks in a little to your body, that kind of thing. So
absolutely.
Maybe I just get used to the belt. I don't know which direction it goes, whether the belt gets used to me or I get used to the belt, but something good happens.
I think there's some Jedi mindset there. You're learning to use the Force.
Yeah, exactly.
Becoming one with the Force.
Become one with your belt.
Right. Leather, I think, is the ideal, and obviously there are applications for other materials, but leather, I think, is ideal because it does break in and form to your body. I've had a couple people take that too literally and think that it's going to be, perfectly in the small of their back and everything. It doesn't really work like that, but it does become part of you, and you become part of it.
Sure.
As you get down the road in your training with it. I think that's something that's overlooked sometimes, and that's why I get so angry when I see these cheap belts that are made from pure leather scrap. It's the equivalent of plywood in the leather world.
Okay.
They'll take the scraps, smash them all up, and make them into little. If you can cut your belt open and it's wide on the inside, I don't care how many times they've told you or how passionately they say it. It is not real leather, and it will not ever break in, and it will not ever be a decent training tool. It's just going to hurt.
It's like the ground up chicken nuggets versus the real hunk of chicken nuggets. Yeah. I don't know what's in that ground up stuff. Yeah, the chicken slurry leftover chicken nuggets that they made in the shape of a dinosaur. So, but I know. But in any case, that's a good segue to a big jump in history. About 30 years. This is 1983, Muscle and Fitness magazine. Nice little cover there. We go from one tiny little ad for a belt, and I think this speaks to the popularity of lifting belts, weightlifting belts, that in this Muscle and Fitness, there are 5 different ads for 5 belts. Actually, 5 different ads. 2 of them are for the same belt. We're not going to go through all of them, but there's a couple that I wanted to show you. So the first one is the notion that we've got Bridges Power Belts, and the Bridges Power Belt is a double thickness leather or double thickness suede. So now we're up to the point where we've got the double thickness going on. So I used calipers, and about 13 millimeters.
Yep.
So what's your theory on it? And here's the suede version. Same idea where they take 2 pieces of leather, sew them together.
Right.
Why the thickness? What's your theory on that?
So I was a 13 millimeter fan for a long time. I do enjoy this is going to be a highly personal thing between different people. I think it's not really, some people like the pain that you can get from that level of tightness. It doesn't flex at all. if you get 13 millimeters of good hard leather and not foam or something else, you're bracing. I mean, there's going to be no doubt whatsoever when you strap that thing on, especially with a lever. But the denominations it's coming out to 13 have that 6.5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So leather is measured in irons or ounces. Irons is a way back in history. I haven't spent much time researching that one. Ounces is like a lot of other fabrics. Your typical cowhide, unsplit, depending on the time of year that it's harvested, comes in at about 6.5 ounces. That's traditionally, and I think that had to do with the rate at which they were being slaughtered, harvested, however you want to say it. From the beef industry. That was the most common denomination of leather. And it may have been that the tanneries were making that thickness because it was used more in other industries. But you slap two of those together, you got 13.
Makes sense to me.
Now, you're not going to find very many, if any at all, 13 millimeter single ply belts unless it's fake leather, because that is some big cow skin.
Yeah, that's a pretty thick skin cow.
Yeah, it's
maybe like
you'll find it. We
elephant hide or something.
Right. I got some elephant hidden somewhere around here. I'm going to try to make a.
Wow, you do the exotic. Yeah, I've seen you've got some exotic belts that you'll do like an inlay stripe or something, and same thing with your.
Got some sitting right here. I got to put some gator on later.
Your cable attachment.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean but I agree. Just imagining like a single piece of leather being that thick, I think that's probably the chicken nugget leather. That's not
right.
That's the plywood leather.
We get 20 ounce leather is the heaviest I've ever seen, and when you read, if you're in the industry, if you're buying leather to make things out of, you'll read the description. It'll say thickness is gauged in the butt. Okay, and it's the same with pretty much any animal. That's because the thickness of the skin throughout the animal changes. Okay. And it's going to be thicker in the butt than it is down towards the belly or up in the shoulder. And it's the most even along the back, which is where sole bend leather comes from. It's called a double back, which is when the cows, if you split a cow in half and laid it out flat, it's the big rectangle part up top. That's the most uniformly thick spot and the tightest grain portion of the leather too. You start getting down towards the belly, it gets looser and it's a little more pliable and stretchy. Up towards the neck's the same way. But that's the thickest you're going to find is probably 20, and nobody sells that. So then where do you get your leather? Where do you get to work with? How do you source it? Where do you, and when you buy it, those are the things you're looking for, I would assume. Yeah. I'm looking for this can get real boring real fast for a lot of people. So this is where we're going to get in the weeds a little bit. So why don't we keep it, a summary of what you do? I'll keep it as short as I can, but I ain't real good at that. So mostly what we buy is strap or harness leather, saddle skirting. Mm-hmm. So it's just natural leather, just like this. And this is a scrap piece that got cut off from a long one to make a belt. But it comes in different cuts, like the double back or sole bend is one we don't typically use because it's normally buying it from tanneries and wholesalers. It's been compressed and rolled, so it's real stiff, and it takes a long time to break in. I mean, it's hard to cut even with real sharp knives, but we use a lot of double shoulders, so it's the front, probably third of the cow. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for anything that's natural. We don't use almost none pre-dyed leather. We do all our dyeing stuff in-house. I want something that's got a little soft hand to it. The feel of it is not, offensive or off-putting. Something that's got a nice tight grain so it takes dye evenly. Yeah. But the tighter the grain, the stronger it is too. And the leather, these are animals, they've been out in the wild. They've got bug bites and scars on them, and call them range marks. They've got some barbed wire nicks and stuff on them. Obviously, the cleaner it is, the more expensive it is. But I look for something around the middle of the road because I want it to be leather. I want it to look like it's leather. I want those fat wrinkles, the nice little wavy grains in it. I want an occasional scar. Brands I really like. I really love seeing brands. I think that's cool. Yeah. tells kind of a story. This is where that cow came from, and if you don't think about how painful that probably was, it's pretty cool to think about.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, not that I would know anything about inflicting pain on yourself. But we get it from a couple different places: Kentucky, Indiana, California, depending on what cut it is, what type of leather it is. We use a lot of English bridle leather. It's made for harnesses and reins and things like that.
That's on your attachment you were telling me that's up over my shoulder here. That
you got it.
And I've been using it for a couple months now, and it's really kind of it's taken shape with the normal movements I use. I use it for a lot of push downs, and I use it for a lot of face pulls. And it's nice too. It's the reason why I've only got 2 attachments back there, because I use that thing for a lot.
It's a really good quality leather. You can make a lot of stuff out of it. I think it's got a really nice feel to it. It breaks in real well. It lasts for a long time. It'll hold its color, hold its shape. I really like it because it's pretty much maintenance free. Something like that is they leave it in a drum for 6 months and roll it around with fats, oils, all kinds of stuff, and it makes it real strong and still stays real soft and pliable. So it's not really going to hurt your hands or anything.
Well, let me ask you about this ad from the same magazine, Muscle and Fitness, 1983. That was a Weider made ad I showed just a second ago. This is from Bob Morse, though. It's Bob Morse's quality belts. They look very similar to the Weider belts. They're just 13 millimeter, 4 inches. That's, like you said, 6.5 plus 6.5, most likely. But then here's the thing I found interesting. It claims that he is the original designer of Suede power belts. Like, that's his claim to fame. I did some online research and could not substantiate that. I don't know if that's true or not, whether Bob Morse is the guy who started making Suede belts. But it seems like a pretty bold claim, and it's in a Weider magazine. Weider published Muscle and Fitness. So why, though? Is it just the touch of Suede feels good? Like, what? Why Suede?
I think it's so Suede is useful for a lot of things. We use it to line the belts with. To date, we've only made like 2 outside Suede belts. A lot of the reason is because, like we talked about, the quality of the leather and it being free of defects, bug bites, all that stuff raises the price, right? Yeah. And if I take a piece of, let me define terms real quick. So this is vegetable tanned leather. So basically, it's kind of what it sounds. The leather's tanned through a bunch of natural oils, and they call them liquors, fat and stuff like that. They also have chromium tanned chromium tanned leather. That's harsh chemicals. It's chromium, and I think there's aluminum sulfate or something in it. I can't really remember. I'm not a chemist. That I probably just described like gunpowder or something. That allows for much more vibrant colors. You can take a piece of leather that looks like somebody dropped it off the back of the truck and then went back and got it after it had been ran over a few times. You can take that and make it look way better than it is. It's much softer leather. You use that for upholstery, sometimes footwear, synthetic goods to accent those or augment those. And it's cheap. Suede is probably one of the cheaper cuts or cheaper types of leather there is. So, and another hot take, and I don't mean this to detract from anybody who makes these belts for a living. A lot of beautiful, solid belts are made, Suede inside and Suede out. But it allows you to take that piece of leather that you bought for, $1 a foot, which if anybody's selling it for $1 a foot, please call me. I really want to talk to you. But you can take that cheaper piece of leather that you bought, which is still a good piece of leather. It's a good, strong, functional piece of leather. You slap Suede on both sides of it, boom, it's beautiful.
Gotcha.
And it's a way for you to cover up defects. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's economical, it's efficient.
Some of the things we were talking about before, if it's a piece that has a whole bunch of, I forget what you called it, basically,
range marks,
blemishes, range marks. There you go. Range marks, blemishes. You slap Suede on either side of it, and you're bringing down the bottom line. Okay, that makes sense. So then, how's that compared to something you brought up, which is nylon? Because then in the same magazine, we get to this. I don't even know what the company is. R&R Industries, and I'm not claiming they're the first, but they're one of many. But by 1983, we have the weightlifting belt shown here. That is a simple belt, pretty much the same dimensions, if you will, at least in terms of 4 inches wide. I don't know if it's 13 millimeters thick, but it's made of super strength nylon. So
Mhm.
nylon, you said something earlier that caught my attention. You said how, leather is going to age in an appreciative way. It's going to,
Right.
form to you, whereas nylon, other things aren't going to do that. I'm sure nylon has its place in certain lifts and certain pursuits, but I was wondering, my take on it is that, kind of like you're saying about Suede, it was probably a way to make a cheaper belt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Anything
mass produce a
synthetic.
belt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You can run, I can make length is a big issue too. Like I talked about, we use double shoulders for ours.
Yeah.
Cows are only so wide. They're much longer than they are wide. So if you're buying full sides, you can get a big, long piece of leather for a big guy like me.
Yeah.
That's using more square footage of leather. That's you're only getting a certain amount of yield from that piece of cow.
Mm-hmm.
Nylon, I can make a 100-yard piece if I want to. I don't have to. I'm not constrained by the limitations of the animal.
Yeah.
It's industry has brought us a long way, and also in some ways held us back.
Sure.
But
and I think the same could be said about a lot of different pieces of equipment.
Absolutely.
Well, to go back to something we brought up earlier, barbells. I mean, there's a big drop off in barbells with mass produced, just chrome, crappy barbells. And now I'm happy to say there's lots of small companies putting out some really high quality stuff. I just got my Appalachian bar from Primal Armor, and
I've heard good things about it.
It's a Buffalo bar, and it's the first time I've had a Buffalo bar, and man, am I loving it. And I could just tell that it's a really nice, the way it was manufactured.
Right.
I invited him on the show. He'll be a future episode. I'll do the history of the Buffalo bar and talk a little bit about Primal Armor.
But I think you might be able to see I'm pointing at I know you can't see where I'm pointing, but back here under the logo, I've got a little Primal Armor hat sitting there.
Nice.
He's a good dude, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear the bar's working out.
He's another really positive experience at Home Gym Con. I didn't know who he was. I was just like, who's this guy with the mustache that's jumping in this log lift? And it turns out it was a Primal Armor guy, and I didn't know anything about his company. And by the end of that weekend, I'd become such a fan of his company. I knew I was going to buy one of his bars, and then boom, he dropped a pre-order on the Buffalo bar, and I was like, you got me. Like, that's perfect. So Home Gym Con 2024 will be coming up. So please, tickets are on sale now. Listeners, get out there, get your tickets now. Ticket prices increase the closer we get to the date. It's kind of like airline tickets. You know how they increase and increase and increase? Same idea, because they're getting more and more limited. So go get your tickets now. Come to beautiful French Lick, Indiana. So you'll be there again, Kris.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there again, and I look forward to hanging out with you in person. I have just a couple more things I wanted to ask you. So the nylon belts, I mean, one of my earliest purchases, and I'm talking like high school, was from this company. So this has a little nostalgia. It would be the Vallejo weightlifting belt. And I didn't have this particular model. Mine was sort of like the Harbinger padded one that I showed earlier. Mine had a little padding on the back, and it was tapered. But this model caught my eye for one thing in particular, in the fine print. You always have to read the fine print. It's a nylon lifting belt and blah, blah, blah. It talks about, it points out some interesting things. Like, it's much lighter than leather. So I like that they're trying to sell you on it. Like, you don't want that.
Ounces make pounds.
You don't want that cumbersome, heavy lifting belt. But this is the part I like the most. It's got some memory foam. That's an interesting take. Some memory foam. But then it says, and you can't see it in the picture. I wish you could see it in the picture. I've examined the picture for way too long, and I can't see it. But it says that it has an accessory slot for your personal radio or tape player.
Nice.
Have you ever made an accessory holster on someone's belt? I mean, can you make something for my Obsidian ammonia?
That's coming.
It's coming up.
I was looking at in a closet. I've got a bunch of stuff stuffed in. I was looking for something, and in the back, I found my old duty belt. And it's still mag pouches, holster. And I looked at it and I thought, why don't I have one of these for the gym? And go ahead and steal the idea, since I'm going to put it out there and I've not made the belt yet. Whoever's listening, there needs to be an ammonia pouch. There needs to be a little pouch for gummies, for powerlifters to eat in between sets, because you got to keep that glycogen up, even though they don't even know what glycogen is. I need a chalk pouch, like a climbing bag for my deadlifts.
I like it.
A few other things I've got an idea for, but that's coming. I have made a slot for a phone.
Okay, for phone.
Yeah, exactly.
The gym influencers will love that. You can just take your phone right out. You're ready.
That's a good one for Weird Angle Wednesday. Just a little slot to stick your phone to get it.
I can't. Yeah, that's a wonderful part of following both Beltfed Strength and Beltfed Muscle Mommy would be that I forget about Weird Angle Wednesday every Wednesday, and I just innocently, sometimes even while I'm trying to eat breakfast, I pull up my Instagram and I'm like, "Good Lord, what am I looking at? Like, what do we got here?" So we're getting off topic here, but I got to know what was the impetus? What was the start of Weird Angle Wednesday? Is that something you just found and you're like, "Yeah, this is our jam"? Is that something you created?
I can't remember what made me think of it, but I like to take weird pictures. It's I know a lot of people probably think, why is this dude always taking pictures of his wife's butt? It's not. It's to date. I don't know that it's made me any kind of money. I'm not looking for it to. It's not a sales tactic. It's not a thirst trap, as the kids call it. I'm genuinely obsessed with her, unhealthily so.
That's a good thing in a marriage.
I decided to make it like a recurring thing. How weird can we get? And it's not really meant to be, that kind of centric. It's just weird in any way. What weird way can we look at this? People are always, nobody wants to watch 30 seconds of a bench set from your coach's angle. Like, nobody wants to see that. So start moving your cameras around, and I want to see it from way up top or in the rafters even, or what's it look like from your shoes perspective?
Weird Angle Wednesday. Oh, I mean, you've got people joining in too. Like to give another home gym con shout out, my favorite ticket holder that was there, Joey, that I follow now on Instagram. Joey was throwing up a Weird Angle Wednesday. I'm like, my goodness, I'm only on my second cup of coffee. I can't handle this. So I mean, it was just it's too much. Now they're coming at me from all angles.
So, it gets intense.
So I guess listeners, if you are all about putting your phone somewhere that will show a weird angle on that day of the week, then hashtag Weird Angle Wednesday. And I didn't know you were the creator of it. There's more home gym history in the making in this episode. Look at that. So I mean, I've definitely plugged it quite a bit, Home Gym Con, but I do so because I love the experience so much. And I think the cool thing is the mix of companies there, the mix of home gym owners there, the mix of just everyday people, talking with each other. It was just a real genuine feeling that I had the whole weekend. That was a good, positive feeling. And I've come away from it.
My thing was, nobody's coming to French Lick to just like hang out. Everybody that was there wanted to be there. Everybody that was there cared about being there, and involvement and participation is a huge thing for me. If you're going to have a company, and then another hot take here, if you're going to be involved in something and make money off something, then by God, you better be involved in it somehow, or you better be some form of participant. And I think that obviously doesn't apply to everything. I get a little too passionate sometimes, but I think if you're going to make money off something, you need to care about it and the people that are doing it. And I think everybody that came last year, I think everybody fit that description pretty well. And that's why I was night. I was like, hey, how do I buy tickets for next year? We need to go ahead and get this set up now.
I already have it on the calendar. I'm ready to rock. I will be back there at Home Gym Con 2024. It's a simple web address, listeners. You can go to homegymcon.com. I'll drop that in the description. I like that I said it was a simple web address and then I mispronounced it. But keeping with that, to close things out here, I'm looking around. I'm like, do I have any other belts? Let's see. This was my first serious. I spent some money on belt, Rogue Ohio belt, and then I won the CT Fletcher belt from Cardillo. That opened a lot of opportunities for me. Ran a contest. And listeners, I'm going to run a contest as well. I'll have some videos rolling out this week over on my channel, Vintage Weights PGH. And if you watch those videos, you'll see that right here behind me, the Beltfed BFAS. What does it stand for? The Beltfed
Beltfed accessory strap.
Accessory strap, which another man who loves his wife very much, Gluck, begs to differ on the name of that. But I'm gonna
Gluck strap. Yeah.
I'm gonna give away, not mine because I'm keeping that sucker, but I will give a lucky listener, a lucky follower who watches those videos I put out later this week, one of those that will be supplied by me right to your doorstep. So make